was a island right offshore here that was called by the white population, it was Ram Island. It was Kochpinicket Island to the Native Americans. In early 1850s, I think, late 40s, early 50s, there was it broke through right where it is, about where it is now. The beach washed through, and of course it washed away Ram Island, and it destroyed the dock, and all that commerce moved down to Chatham Village at that time.
According to Graham Geiss, every 140 years the inlet breaks through in a similar place and then continues to migrate to the south. So the inlet here in 1846 is 140 years later would be 1986, which is when the beach broke through right here again. So the beach is constantly in flux. The ocean pushes it in, it rolls over the marsh, it thins, and then it breaks through. When the beach breaks through, we tend to get a lot of shifting sand. There's sandbars come and go, channels deepen, and that's a good time to find something we hadn't seen before. It was an early summer day. We had taken a ride to Chatham and we're coming back through this back channel. It was shallow and clear, and we went over a few dark objects that looked like posts sticking up out of the sand. I thought maybe ribs of a ship. So we turned around and floated back over, and you could obviously see that it was in the shape of a large heart. So I knew it must be an old fish weir. So from there we took some pictures and then sent the drone up to really get a look at what it was.
So there's three parts of the trap. You have the leader, the heart, and the bowl. The leader is a straight, long line that usually runs from the shoreline out to deeper water. And then that leads into the heart, which is the heart shape, what you saw there. And then off the other end of the heart is the bowl where the fish all gather. And that's where you go in and you purse the trap. You purse the bowl. And that's where you actually catch the fish, is in the round part.
What's interesting to me about it is that it uncovered itself just as it did 150 years ago. I think now that the inlet is back where it was, the channels have moved relatively closer to where they were, and it's exposed this piece of history.
Being down here, they transitioned, like a lot of people did, towards making their living off the water in some fashion, whether they went fishing or bought a vessel, went coastals. Eventually guys went deep water, and Chatham was very prominent for the seafaring men that developed from here. They were sought after.
When I did some research, I went through the old law books and found that in the 1850s, a law was enacted to allow a man named Samuel Young to construct a fish weir north of the new harbor connected to Nauset Beach, which is very similar to the area we found it in.
My father's mother goes back to the Mayflower, and my father's dad goes back to Provincetown around late 1800s. My father's father was a fish weir fisherman, and his father was a fish weir fisherman also up here in Provincetown. And my grandfather moved to Chatham in 1927 and fished the fish weirs down there.
When the drone went up, you could clearly see the heart shape with the bowl behind it, and then some remnants of the trap scattered about. And then a little bit behind it and next to it, you could see a second trap that may have been a little bit older. The sandbars are always shifting here. The inlet broke through in 1846, very close to where it is now. And then in 1851, there was a large storm that opened it up even more. So that may have been the end of Samuel Young's fish weir. That moving sand could have covered him up or swept him away.
Well, most likely it was because fish weirs, you had good years and you had bad years. And for most of us, it was more bad years than good years. And I think probably since 1850, she could have probably, everybody was threatened to get through. Just, you know, I'm done with fish weir fishing, you know. You can go, you can have years. It could be 3 really good years in a row, and then have 5 bad ones. The good years are what kept you going. But if you get a couple of bad years in a row and you don't have any money, you're like, I give up, I got my nets off, we're just leaving the traps there.
He would have salvaged the nets as best he could. The leader possibly could even have been brush, so that would have been sacrificial. But possibly too, there was just no fish and he abandoned his venture. Hard to tell without real records.
I know of a guy who just had enough with it and he just left everything in and walked away and just left the traps there. So that stuff all eventually rotted, and the next person that had that area, you know, you had to watch out for, you know, all the broken stuff that was left there.
You know, even though as I mentioned earlier, all my grandfathers were fishermen or related with the trade, my father, when he was getting out of a senior in high school, I think it was asked by his father, well, young Joe, what are you going to do when you grow up, so to speak? And my father said, why? I'm going to be a fisherman. And my grandfather said, no, you're not. Just too tough a way to make a living.
Well, for me, it wasn't really, I didn't pick it because it was a preferred way to fish. It was just what my family did, and I grew up in it. Fish was my dad since I was 16 on weekends when I was in high school, and I eventually took the business over from him. My father tried to talk me out of it. My dad tried to talk me out of fish weir business because at that time we thought it was in its end stages. Back in mid-80s to 1990. But looking back on it, I should have listened to him.
This here is one of the fish weir poles that we found on the sandbar. You can see it's only about 2.5 inches in diameter. It's been hand cut with an axe to a wedge shape. One of the reasons they use a wedge shape is that when they stood them up, they could rock them back and forth, and that's what would sink it into the ground. This pole is rotted off. It was probably in the ground 2 feet and was probably 12, 15 feet high that the nets hung on, or the leader hung on.
It was a great way of fishing. I say was because I don't think anybody's doing it now. When on the fish weirs, we only had like 30 days. The fish weirs, we spent 2 to 3 months putting the structure up. Fish for the month. The fish came in the month of May, and then another month or 2 taking it all back down. So that's how it worked. Now we used to, if we fish back in the summer, when we fished back in the summer, then we would fish right up until like September, and then spend October and November taking the gear down. And then mending the nets in the fields, put all the nets in the field and spread them out, dry them, then mend all the holes.
This find's important to me because I've always been fascinated by local history, fish weirs in particular. They started back with the Native Americans, and we did have them here locally. There was more traps up by Hog Island and in Namaquoit River. And it was a time and place when that's how they lived. And it's always nice to find an artifact from that time because it brings you back.
That drone footage piqued my interest because it looked just like, it's just spitting image of the modern day weir. the shape and everything. That's what struck me about it. So I've looked at it. Look, it could be the same heart. So obviously the same methods that they used back then we're using now. And probably the same size, same dimension, and everything. And so that, for me, just thinking, I always wanted to go back like 100 years and walk the streets or walk the shoreline and see what it looked like. Just even if it was just like for a day, you know. So but you know, a lot of stuff you're looking at, you don't even know what it is. You just know it was something.
It's important to me to go for a boat ride and look around just because this is the environment we live in. This is what's below us and around us is very important to me, and observing it is how we learn. I think the more we know about the place, the more respect we have for it, and tend to guard it more.